Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. And in this video, we're going to be discussing the latest paper, that is the Feb-March 2022 paper. So let's get started. So guys, the first question is asking us, a production possibility curve shows the combination of outputs an economy can produce using all available resources. At which point on the diagram are all available resources used? We all know what a PPC curve is. It shows the different possible combinations of different goods of two goods and services that can be produced with its given resources. So at which point are all available resources used? So the answer should be A, that is W and X. Why? Because we know that on the production possibility curve represents full employment of resources. So whenever we will be on the production possibility curve, any point all on the curve, whether it be A, B, C, whatever, any point on the curve would represent full employment of resources. It would mean that all resources are efficiently utilized. There is no slack, there is no idle capacity, no spare capacity. Okay, but if you're on any point that is inside the PPC curve, any point inside the PPC curve represents inefficiency. It represents idle and spare capacity, right? So W and X should be the answer, because they're saying at which points are all the available resources used. So full utilization of resources, remember, on the production possibility curve, right? And Z basically represents a point that is unachievable with the given resources. However, this can be achieved only if the production possibility curve shifts outwards. Question number 2 states, what is a normative economic action based on? A normative economic action is not based on facts, neither market forces, neither price changes. It's based on opinions. I've already told you before as well in my previous videos that um, anything that is normative, be it a statement or be it an action, it would always be opinion based. It would involve a value judgment. Maybe he thinks that, or I think that, or maybe you think that, right? There will always be a counter argument to it. So yeah, normative statements are value judgment, and remember that value judgments can't be tested. I mean, you might have a certain value judgment, I might have a certain value judgment, you might have a certain opinion, I might have a certain opinion. For example, you might think that demand side policies are important, I might think that supply side policies are important. Yeah, remember, right? So these are basically normative actions. Question 3 states, which function of money overcomes the double coincidence of wants that exists in a barter system? It's an easy question. Double coincidence of want in a barter system, the problem was that if I want oranges and I have apples to exchange for, maybe the other person selling the oranges do not want apples. So I mean, the want should coincide, as in what I want, he should also want the same. I mean, he should also want the thing that I am, selling, or I am exchanging in exchange for what I am buying from him. But this problem was solved by money, because the problem of double coincidence of wants was overcome by money. And that is why, because money served as a medium of exchange. Now I do not need to sell my apples in order to buy oranges. I can just buy oranges from the money that I have, because money was a medium of exchange, right? So question 3 should be A. Question 4 says, the production possibility curve shows the abilities of 4 economies to produce wheat and rice. Which PPC has the lowest opportunity cost? Okay, so it's a good question. So for example, so they have drawn a PPC for 4 different countries. Let's say this is country A, and let's take wheat and rice here. This is country B. Okay, first let's write down the values for country A. So it shows, for country A, it shows that the maximum wheat can be produced as 1, while the maximum rice that can be produced is 40. For country B, the maximum wheat is 4, while the maximum rice is 40. For country C, the maximum wheat that can be produced is 6, and the maximum rice is 80. So country D, the maximum wheat is 6, and the maximum rice is 120. Now guys, one more thing you need to understand. A lot of students think that this is 1 and 40. I mean 4 and 40. It's not that 1 and 40. It's not that country A can produce one wheat and 40 together. It's not like that, right? It could either produce either 1 if all resources are diverted to producing wheat, or it could produce 40 rice. Because if it produces 1 unit of wheat, it's producing 0 rice, and if it's producing 40 units of rice, it's producing 0 wheat, right? Remember that. So it's not that they are, these units are basically produced at the same time, and that is why the need for opportunity cost, to calculate opportunity cost, arises. Otherwise, if we could produce them together, I mean, why are we calculating the opportunity cost when we are not foregoing anything? So if you're producing 1 unit of wheat, we're foregoing 40. If we are foregoing 4 units of wheat, which means that we are not producing any rice, it means that we are foregoing 40 units of rice. If you're producing 6 units of wheat, which means we are not producing any rice, it means you're foregoing 120 units of rice. Okay, so first remember that whenever we want to calculate the comparative advantage, it's not the comparative advantage question, it's talking about the lowest opportunity cost of producing wheat. So they're asking about the lowest opportunity cost for producing wheat. So if you want to calculate the lowest opportunity cost for producing wheat, you need to calculate how much rice is foregone. But so for example, for country A, if you produce 1 unit of wheat, you forego 40. For country B, you produce 4 units of wheat, you forego 40. But here you can't really calculate the opportunity cost because the the output for wheat against which you will forgo rice. Remember this, the output of wheat against which you will calculate the opportunity cost of producing wheat is not common. Here you are producing 1 unit of wheat, here 4, here 6, here 6. So I mean, you can't really compare and calculate which has the lowest opportunity cost. So you need a common unit, or you could say you need to in order to find the lowest opportunity cost and make the appropriate comparison, you need to bring the ratios further, simplify them, and then calculate the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of wheat. So for producing 1 unit of wheat, how many rice is foregone for country A? It's already 1. So I mean, you need to forego 40 units of rice. For country B, in order to produce 1 unit of wheat, you need to forego 10 units of rice, that is 40 over 4. In order to produce 1 unit of wheat, you need to forego 13.3 units of rice. And for country D, in order to produce 1 unit of wheat, you need to forego 20 units of rice. So the lowest opportunity cost, these are all foregone. So in order to produce 1 unit of wheat, you need to forego 10 units of rice in country B. So which means that country B has the lowest opportunity cost of producing wheat, right? So that makes B the answer. Okay. Moving forward, it says question number 5 says the diagram shows the supply curve. What explains the supply curve for chicken slope upwards? An increase in demand for chicken will bring about a rise in supply. Yeah, definitely. If demand rises, quantity supplied would go up, but then this is not the reason. I mean, they're just stating a fact. Farmers' productivity rises as price rises. I mean, if price rise, no, this is not the answer. Increased production leads to a reduction in cost. Increased production will not, I mean, okay. Increased production will not lead to a reduction in cost. It can, but this is also not an explanation for why your supply is upward sloping. The cost of an additional chicken production rises upward. This will be the answer. Why? Because what they're saying is the cost of an additional chicken production rises as output rises. So they're talking about marginal cost. Marginal cost rises, output rises. And I've already told you guys before as well that supply curve is your marginal cost curve. If you have seen my producer surplus videos, I've already explained over there as well that supply curve is your marginal cost curve. So what they're technically saying is that in order to produce each additional unit of chicken, the marginal cost will actually start rising. And because the marginal cost will go up, you need a higher price to incentivize production. And that is why your supply curve is actually upward sloping. Remember, the supply curve is the marginal cost curve, and as you produce an additional unit, the additional cost because of producing that additional unit goes up, and that is your marginal cost. Marginal cost is the extra cost incurred because of producing an extra unit of chicken, right? So because that extra cost of producing an extra unit of chicken is going up, I mean, definitely the price has to match the marginal cost, and so that the producer can actually end up producing that unit, right? What is marginal cost? Marginal cost is basically the minimum price the producer would be. So for example, if your chicken, if you produce an extra chicken and the marginal cost rises by, and the marginal cost for producing that extra chicken is because of producing that extra chicken is, let's say, $10. I mean, the price must also be $10 so that the farmer actually produces that unit. If the price is less than what the marginal cost is, if price is less than marginal cost, I mean, there's no point in producing that unit. The producer would have a negative producer welfare. So remember that on all these points on the supply curve, the price is equal to marginal cost, the price is equal to marginal cost, the price is equal to marginal cost. And I've also explained all this concept in my producer surplus videos. It's on my YouTube channel. You can search it in the videos list. Probably it might not be on a playlist, but yeah, it's available in the videos list. So that is why the supply curve is kind of upward sloping. That makes D the right answer. Question number 6 says the diagram shows the demand and supply curves for cars in India. The initial equilibrium is at X. What will be the new equilibrium? The subsidies. Subsidies are government grants, financial grants that are given to producers to reduce cost, given to Indian manufacturers. And there's also the if the price of train and bus journeys is going up, which is a substitute for cars, so definitely, I mean, people will travel less by train and buses and more by cars. So demand will go up as well as supply. So if D1 and S1 is the original equilibrium, then demand should move outwards. So the new equilibrium should be where D3 intersects S3, and that is at what? At B, right? So B is the right answer. Question 7 says demand curves are drawn ceteris paribus. Which other things are not required to remain the same when an individual demand curve for an ice cream is constructed? So if an individual demand curve is constructed, which is downward sloping, we are actually measuring we're actually measuring how quantity demanded responds to a change in price, right? So in that sense, we keep all the other factors that can affect demand constant, such as income, price of substitutes, and all, because these are also the factors that can affect them. Because you can question me, right? You can say that if the price that here the quantity demanded could rise maybe because of good advertising, but I'll say, hang on, we are keeping that factor constant. We're only considering that we are assuming that the price has fallen, right? So that is why we're keeping other factors constant. So what other things are not required to remain the same? The price is not required to remain the same because all the other factors are changed. I mean, all the other factors are kept constant, not the price. So that makes 7D the right answer. Question 8 says, what is a measure of cross elasticity of demand for good X in terms of Y? Remember that whenever we are calculating the cross elasticity of demand for something, so the percentage change will be for that good. So for example, if you're calculating the XCD for good X, we'll take percentage change of quantity demanded for good X, right? So for whatever good we are calculating the XCD for, that would basically be the changes in the quantity demanded, the percentage changes will be taken for that good, divided by the percentage change in the price of other good, which is obviously Y, divided by the percentage in the price of Y. So a change in demand, no, it's not a change in demand, it's a percentage change in demand. So that makes it makes C the right answer. The percentage change in demand for X divided by the percentage change in Y, price for Y. Question 9 says, so 8 is C. Question number 9 says, when the price mechanism, we know that what the price mechanism is, it operates in a free market and it ensures an efficient allocation of resource. When the price mechanism be least likely to reallocate resources to meet a change in consumer preference. By the way, I have explained the 4 functions of price mechanism in detail in the previous 3 papers I uploaded. I think it's either in November 2021 or either in June 2021. You can go and search that, it's on my channel. So when will the price mechanism be least likely to reallocate resources to meet a change in consumer preferences? So the answer for this should be boy, because if consumers are preferring more public goods, which obviously they do, it's not that consumers don't prefer public goods, but the free market, we know that they do not provide public goods, because problem with public goods is that it suffers from the free rider problem, right? And the free markets do not provide them due to lack of profit motive, and hence the price mechanism will not allocate resources in that direction, even if the demand for public goods is rising, right? Because the producers will not be able to maximize their profits in that sense. So the price mechanism it's not always that the price mechanism. Remember that the price mechanism will work for private goods, not for public goods. So when the new preferences are for more public goods, so despite that, the price mechanism will be least interested to reallocate resources to meet a change in consumer preferences. So boys should be the answer, 9B. Question 10 says, a firm estimates the price less supply of plus 1.5. What does this indicate? By the way, guys, I'm kind of expecting, I think I shouldn't be saying this, but maybe in your paper, that is tomorrow, there could be MCQs with more diagrams, and more calculations, because in the Feb-March, they have listed some less diagrams. So maybe yes, in your paper you could expect a more diagrams, such as maybe subsidy taxes diagram, maximum minimum prices, consumer producer surplus diagrams, tariff diagrams. So make sure that you are well prepared for it, okay? And also do mention in the comments that you're understanding this paper. Question number 10 says, a firm estimates that the PS is 1.5 plus just means direct relation between price and quantity. So 1.5 means greater than 1. So this is representing an elastic supply. The coefficient is 1.5, which is greater than 1. It is an elastic supply. One of the factors that your supply is elastic is because the firm has available stock of raw materials or whatever. But yeah, if the firm has higher stock of raw material, obviously supply would be elastic. It would be more responsive to a price change. The producers would be quick at responding to price changes. B, it says the firm has no excess capacity. Obviously, if the firm has no excess capacity, in that sense, in that case, supply is inelastic. The firm operates in a competitive market. In that case, this is not a factor that affects your PES. Even if it operates in a competitive market, your supply could be elastic or inelastic depending upon the factors that affect elasticity. The firm raises its price and its total revenue increases by 15. No, it's not that. It should have. If this was the firm raises the price and its quantity supplied rises by 15%, this could be the answer. Question 11. So A is the answer. Question 11 says a rise in price of a good is accompanied by an increase in quantity demanded. What could explain this? So what could explain this? Consumers spend a higher proportion of their income on a good. This is explaining this option A is just talking about elasticity. Because consumers are spending a higher proportion of disposable income on the good, it would make the product more elastic. The price of complementary good also increases. Okay. This is not the answer. Definitely, the price of goods taken. This makes the answer because if the quality of the product is going up, the demand will go up basically, and the demand goes up. So we can see that the price is going up. The price of the product is going up, but still people are actually buying more because now they're actually buying more units. That is, they're buying Q2 units. So the demand is going up as well as the we can see that quantity supply is extending. So yeah, definitely if demand shifts to outwards, more will be demanded, and yeah. So the price of good here is talking about the fact that the fact that price is rising, it's because of a rise in demand because the quality level is going up. Question number 12 states what could cause a demand curve for inferior good to shift to the right. Inferior goods are those goods that whose demand rises because of a fall in income. So definitely your income should go down. So 12A should be the answer, a decrease in incomes, right? And normal goods are those goods that have a direct relation with income. If income rises, the demand for normal goods goes up. Question number 13 states a diagram shows the effect of a change in market for good X on the market for good Y. What is most likely relationship? So we could see that the supply is rising, and because of that, what will happen is that the price will go down. If the price of a product is going down, which is increasing the demand for the other product, it means that they both are jointly demanded. They both are complements basically. So X and Y should be complement. So the price of X is going down, but it's increasing the demand for Y basically. So X and Y are basically complements. That makes 13A the right answer. Okay guys, question number 14 says that to improve its financial position, a government decided to reduce the expenditures on investments in the public sector. Okay, fine. So basically, they're reducing the government spending in order to make sure that their financial position is more stable. There was not a foreign economic growth. Okay, what was the most likely impact or the most likely effect of the government's action? An original budget deficit was reduced, an original budget surplus was reduced. Okay, so consumer expenditure decreased? No, consumer expenditure has nothing to do. I mean, the impact would not be on consumer expenditure, obviously, because it's government spending. So the impact should either be on economic growth or national income. So they're talking about the impact, most likely effect of the government's action. So yeah, this is not the answer. Consumer expenditure goes down because of a rise of foreign income taxes, incomes, maybe consumer confidence, etc. Public sector productivity decreased. If public sector productivity had gone down because of a reduction in expenditure on investments, then economic growth would also have been gone down, because they have stated that economic growth is not going down. So no, this is not the answer as well. Remember that productivity has a bad impact on the economy in terms of if productivity goes down, it increases the cost because efficiency goes down, and it results in a fall in your economic growth. And if that's the case, you're in this scenario, your SRAS would have actually shifted to the left. The fact that also, by the way, productivity is a factor that can affect your LRAS as well, but obviously they're talking about immediate. So yeah, your SRAS could go to the left, and then obviously in the long run as well, your LRAS will go to the left as well. So yeah, it could impact your SRAS and LRAS both, your productivity, immediate effects and long run effects as well. As far as this MCQ is concerned, the answer should be A, because an original budget deficit was what is a budget deficit? A budget deficit is simply, it arises because the government is spending more than the revenues it receives. So if the government spending is more than the primary source of revenue is taxes, right? So you're comparing it with taxes. So if the government spending is more than the tax revenues, definitely the budget or the allocation that the government has planned to do in the economy would be in a deficit. I mean, that deficit has to be financed from somewhere. But they're trying to reduce. They're trying to improve the financial position. So it says that the original budget deficit was reduced. It means that whatever budget deficit that the government had, it will go down now because the government is reducing the expenditures on. So if the government is reducing the expenditures, the budget deficit would definitely go down. And the original budget surplus was reduced. No, budget surplus would actually increase, not reduce, because let's suppose if the government had originally had a budget surplus, and if the government reduces the government spending, the budget surplus would actually go up, right? Question number 15 states, what are the effects of government imposing the maximum prices below the equilibrium? So maximum prices are those that the government imposes in order to in order to make sure that the consumers are happy and they can afford the goods and services, especially necessities. So if the equilibrium price is high and the government imposes a maximum price, it would reduce the quantity supplied to Q1 and increase the quantity demanded to Q2. So as in the quantity demanded would go up. So yeah, C should be the answer. 15 is C. Okay. So, but if the maximum price is imposed above the equilibrium, remember that it would be ineffective and nothing will happen. In fact, the original equilibrium price and the original equilibrium quantity will prevail in the market. So 15 is C. Question number 16 says the National Library Board of Singapore in a public sector organization that finances and manages a state library. So Singapore has different state libraries, and the government is the National Library Board, which is obviously part of the government, is financing those libraries. It's managing its affairs and funding it as well. What is the most likely reason for it? As in, why is it doing it? Libraries are public goods, okay? Libraries are merit goods. The cost of providing library services would be greater than the private sector. I mean, we can't really say that, so this is not the answer. The opportunity cost to the public sector of providing library services is zero. I mean, the opportunity cost can never be zero, because if the government is providing or funding the libraries, definitely it has an opportunity cost, because I mean, that money could have been spent elsewhere as well. So yeah, C and D is not the answer. It could either be A or B, but in my opinion, A is not the answer as well, because remember that libraries are not public goods. I'll tell you why. Okay, so if these government state libraries are free of charge, right? They're not charging you anything. So it is non-excludable, right? It's non-excludable because they're not charging you anything. Anyone can go. You can't exclude anyone. You can't stop me from going there if you're going there. But they are not non-rivalrous. I mean, they are rivalrous, because if the library is full, I mean, I can't enter the library because it's now full, right? So the benefit for me is less, and the more people there are in the library, there's a chance of more noise, and I would prefer libraries to be less people there. So I mean, in that sense, we could say, we intuitively we could say that they are rivalrous. So this makes it quasi public. But remember, I mean, they haven't mentioned about whether the government is charging or not. So I mean, if the government is, let's say, charging a minimal amount, let's say it's charging $1, so that makes it excludable as well, and rivalrous as well. So in that sense, there are two options. Either the library could be a quasi-public good if the government is not charging anything, but it makes it rivalrous, so it's quasi-public. But if the government is charging a minimal amount, let's say $1 or $2, whatever, from the people, and so in that sense, it would make it it would make it a private good, because if the government is charging, it means that I'm not allowed there, you are not allowed there if you don't pay. So it makes it non-excludable, and like I said, it's already it makes it excludable. If the government is charging even a minimal amount, it makes it excludable if we do not pay, and it's already rivalrous. So it's not a public good in that sense. But yeah, libraries are merit goods, because libraries, the more you go to the library, the more knowledge you have, the more productive you are. If you're a worker, it benefits your organization. There are so many external benefits of education. We all know how education can result into external benefits. So in that sense, it's a merit good, because it's not going to only help you, it's going to help your others around you as well. So there are third party benefits of education as well. What are those third party benefits? I have a complete video on merit goods on my channel, although it's for A2, but yeah, you can see that. Ignore the diagram, but as far as the knowledge part is concerned, you can see that. So guys, question 17 says three types of taxes are listed: sales tax, that is value added tax on fuel, specific tax of 10% on cigarettes, the percentage of income tax on individual earnings increase as taxable income rises. Which combination describes the effect of these types of taxes? Okay, so if you look at the first one, a sales tax on fuel, it's an indirect tax. We know that indirect taxes are regressive in nature. What do you mean by regressive? It means that the burden of tax falls more on the poor. It consumes a higher proportion of the poor's income as you compare to a lower proportion as compared to the rich, where the indirect taxes consume a lower proportion of the poor's income, right? So the tax burden falls more on the poor as compared to the rich people, and that creates an uneven or an unequal distribution of income. So the value added tax is obviously regressive, which makes C or D the answer. Let's see the rest. The specific tax on cigarettes, definitely a specific tax on cigarettes is also an indirect tax. Indirect tax could either be specific or it could be ad valorem. That would, and remember that whenever taxes are imposed on the product, whenever the taxes will be imposed on the product, it would be an indirect tax, right? So it makes the specific tax aggressive in nature as well. So D should be the answer. The percentage of income tax on individual earnings increase as taxable income rises. So it's progressive. Income taxes are progressive in nature. They are direct taxes, which means that the tax will progress. In other words, the tax burden will progress as income rises. So which will mean that the rich people will be taxed more. The burden, the tax burden, or the proportion of tax paid out of the incomes from the rich will be higher than the proportion of tax burden paid out of the incomes of the poor, right? Progressive taxes create more even distribution of income or equal distribution of income. So 17 should be D for David. Okay guys, question 18 says the bus fare in rural areas 5 per journey. The government decides to improve the local transport by giving bus firms a subsidy of 2 per journey. The diagram shows the possible changes in demand and supply. What is the new quantity of journeys in the bus fares for a journey? So basically they are giving you a subsidy, and let's first find out the original demand and supply curve. So $5 is your market price, which gives us this supply curve, right? And this demand curve, which is telling us that the equilibrium quantity right now is 950, right? So having said that, they're giving a subsidy, which means supply will shift to the right, that is S1. So it shifts to the right and it gives us a new quantity that is traded for 1050. So this is a new quantity, so definitely the quantity will increase. So the number of journeys will increase to 1050. So it's either C or D. And the market price is how much? The market price will definitely go down to $4. So the answer is actually C, right? And you can also find out the value of the subsidy. Remember, the value of the subsidy is the difference between the two supply curves. You take the new supply curve, you take it up. You take it up vertically. So this vertical distance between the two supply curve represents the amount of subsidy. So at this point, the corresponding value is 6, and at this point, the corresponding value is 4. So 6 minus 4 is $2. So $2 per unit subsidy is given to the bus company, right? Moving forward, question 19 says the diagram shows. Okay, so I would suggest that for these kind of questions, you should do these kind of questions in the end, because they require some form of analysis of these diagrams. Although these questions are not difficult, by the way. The diagram shows the annual CPI index for Japan over the years 1990 to 2010. In which period did Japan experience both inflation at a rate of approximately on an average 2% and deflation at a rate of 2.5%. Inflation is when prices are rising, deflation when they are falling. So consumer price index is given not in index number but in percentage form. So basically they have given the rate of inflation here. They've already calculated the rate of inflation. Okay. So in which period? So answer option A. So for these kind of questions, we look at the answer options from 1992 to 1994. 92 to 94. If you look at 92 to 94, if we see the inflation is actually going down from 92 to 94, on an average we see that inflation is actually going down, though it has increased a bit, but in 94 it has gone down to 1%, but there's no deflation, right? Although inflation has approximated between 1 and 2%, but we don't see any deflation. Deflation will arise. When does deflation arises? Deflation is arising in this area. This is the area of deflation, right? Because the inflation, remember that whenever inflation becomes negative, that's when deflation is, okay? Anyway, so it's A will not be the answer. Okay. Now, moving forward, option B states 1996 to 98. 96 to 98, let's see. In 96, there was a bit of deflation to somewhere between 0 and 1%. And then up till 98, the inflation averaged around 2 to 3%. Although it was less than 3, but then it fell again after 1998. But then, yeah, that doesn't answer part B as well. Part C says 2006 to 2008. If you look at 2006 to 2008, 2006 it was negative, approximately close to 1. Then it became positive, and then in 2008 it again became, in fact it became 0. And then after 2008 it increased, but then again this is not the answer as well. Now obviously then if you are in an exam scenario, if you have crossed out these now, there's no need to even check D, because although if you get time you can check it later, but I would say just mark D and then move on, okay? If you are, but only do that if you're 100% confident that A, B and C are not the correct answer. But obviously you must also know the logic for D. So let's see the logic. So 2008 till 10, let's see that. If you look at 2008 till 10, your inflation rate is going up in positive, which is, and you see it's close to 2.5. It's close to, just a second, it's close to between, from 2008 it started from 0%, and then it moved up and it moved up, and then it was between if you look at on an average from 2008 to 2009, it was between 0 and 2%, right? In fact 0 and 2.5%, because they've used the word approximately, so obviously we're not using a graph paper for it. And then after 2009 it actually it has gone down, and it has gone down to approximately 2%, or maybe more than 2% in fact. So yeah, that's why all answer options should be D. Okay, that makes D the correct answer. So it's a easy question, nothing so complicated about it. Question 20 says a government removes its quota on imported laptops, assuming a normal demand and upward sloping supply curve. Okay, what is likely the effects on domestic laptop manufacturers? Change in the price received by, so obviously if you're removing a quota, the domestic price for your laptops should actually decrease, because remember that when a quota is imposed, it reduces the quantity of imports, but it also increases the domestic price for the laptop, so it should decrease, right? And in fact, your incomes for domestic producers should decrease as well, because when you are going to remove the quotas, what will happen is that people will start importing more now, which will be a threat to domestic firms, and definitely it will reduce the incomes for domestic firms, because people will now switch back to import. So A should be the correct answer. 20 should be A. Income is basically revenue for the domestic firms, right? Question 21 is talking about terms of trade. It says the terms of trade for Mauritius fell from 101.2 with the first quarter to 101.6 in the second quarter. Which combination could have produced this? So basically terms of trade are falling. What are terms of trade? Terms of trade are the index of export prices over the index of import prices times 100. That's what terms of trade are. So terms of trade, TOT in quarter 1 was 111.2, TOT in quarter 2 is 106.1. Terms of trade are actually worsening, they are deteriorating. So it is happening, it could happen when your export prices are going down, or maybe your import prices are rising, or maybe both of them are rising, but import prices are rising faster or by a greater extent than export prices. So the answer for that, this makes the answer B for boy. Export prices are rising and import prices are rising as well, but then obviously it's not mentioned here, but it's assumed that import prices are rising faster than export prices. Okay. Now, I would want to give a little bit explanation on TOT as well, that you should know what TOT is. TOT is basically an index that shows the value of what it's telling you. This is basically telling you the value of a country's average export prices relative to their import prices. and it basically measures how much imports a country can buy for a unit of exports. Another way of saying it is this as well. So if your terms of trade have gone down from 101.2 to 106.1, you can actually calculate the percentage decline. That's 4.5% if you calculate that. They have actually decreased by 4.5%. So what do I mean by that? It means that now a basket of exports, would be able to buy 4.5% less imports in quarter two, right? Because TOT in quarter two has gone down. So a basket of exports would be able to buy 4.5% less imports in quarter two, as compared to quarter one. And in that sense, we need to export a higher quantity to buy the same quantity of imports. That is basically the analysis of these figures, right? So we need to export a higher quantity in quarter two to buy the same quantity of imports, same basket of imports. Okay. Moving forward, question number 22 states that from an initial position of equilibrium shown, there is an increase in government expenditure on goods and services, and simultaneously an increase in the cost of production of goods. What best describes the likely impact? So there's an increase in government spending. Government spending is a component of AD, and as a result of that, aggregate demand should rise. So AD should shift to the right. That is from AD to 81, let's say. And simultaneously, it says there's an increase in cost of production. So your aggregate supply is shifting to the left. But then the point over here is that it's not mentioned that to what extent is AD rising or AS is rising. So basically, the magnitude or the extent of the shift is not mentioned. Now, what do you mean by that? You need to understand that if AD will rise, the national income will go up. But if AS will fall, your national income will go down. So if your AD was rising more by the amount by which AS was falling, so the net effect would have been that overall your national income would have gone up. But if AD was rising by less extent than the extent to which AS was falling, the net effect would have been that your national income would have gone down. But here it's not mentioned, so we can't really be certain on the impact of your national income, whether it will go up or whether it will go down. That is why we're assuming that they're both maybe rising or falling by the same extent, and that is why the impact on national income is uncertain. And I think that makes D the right answer, where the national income is uncertain. But in any case, the prices will rise. Why? Because when AD is rising, prices go up, and AS is also going down, which makes prices go up. So question number 22 should be D. Question number 23 states the diagram shows a shift in the AD curve from AD1 to AD2. What could not be a cause of the shift? So question number 23, what could not be the cause of shift? Decrease in income tax will be a cause of shift because it will impact consumption, which is a component of AD. A decrease in the price of the goods would be the answer, because when price goes down, that causes a movement along with the price along the aggregate demand curve. And actually, that's the reason why aggregate demand curve is downward sloping, because there's a negative relation between the price and the real output, right? Because that generates the wealth effect, the interest rate effect, and the trade effect, right? There's a reason why AD slopes downwards, because there's an inverse relation between price and real GDP because of the wealth effect, interest rate effect, and trade effect. Anyways, question number 24 states which item is not included in the current account. Obviously, a current account records your inflows and outflows of money, and for the following reasons, such as export and import of goods and services, which is recorded as the balance of trade. Export and import of services, that is balance of services. Net income flows, that is your primary income. Your net current transfers, that is your secondary income. Now, obviously, all of these are recorded in current account except for the balancing item, which is your recording your net errors and omissions in order to balance the overall BOP, because we know that current account should be equal to the value of the financial and capital account. And if this does not balance, if the BOP does not balance because of this, then the statistical discrepancies are the difference represents the statistical discrepancies, that is net errors and omissions, right, in order to balance the BOP. Question 25 states the price of a country's exports rise by 5% while the price of its imports fall by 5%. So the price of exports are going up while the price of imports are going down. So if export prices are going up, so if the export prices are, what will definitely improve the country's, okay. So as far as balance of trade and current account is concerned, if the price of exports are going up and the price of imports are going down, so here people will actually the exports will fall, so export revenue should go down, while the quantity of imports will go up and import expenditure should go up. In that sense, balance of trade should worsen, and so should the current account balance worsen. So A and B is not the right answer. As far as the exchange rate is concerned, if your exports go down, then demand for the currency will fall, and if your imports go up, then supply of the currency will rise, which will actually depreciate or decrease the value of the exchange rate, and definitely that will not improve the exchange rate. It will actually worsen the currency's external value. So the correct answer is D. Definitely, because what is going to happen is that if export prices go up, we know that TOT is the index of export prices over the index of average import price. We're basically taking the average export and average import prices, right, times 100. 100 as in the index number, not the percentage. So basically, if your export prices are rising, the TOT will definitely improve, while the import prices are falling, it will also improve the TOT. Because remember that export prices are coming in the numerator, while like import prices are coming in the denominator. Here is your export prices over import prices, right? So if the numerator goes up, the TOT value should go up, and if import prices go down, the denominator goes down, the TOT value should again go up. Question number 26 states, what is not a form of protectionism? This is protectionism, this is all these are protectionism. As far as voluntary export restraints is concerned, I've given a detailed explanation. I think it was either in November 21 or June 21, but I remember I did give a detailed explanation on the recent 3 to 4 past papers that I've uploaded. So yeah, it makes B the correct answer. Sales tax is not a form of trade barrier. Okay guys, now let's move on to question number 27. It says two countries X and Y produce food and drink. The table shows how many hours it takes them to produce 1 unit of each. So basically they have given the number of hours. So these are basically hours that are given, right? So it takes 10 hours for country X to produce 1 unit of food, while 2 hours to produce drink, and respectively 20 hours and then 12 hours to produce 1 unit of food and drink. Okay, what will be the result if country Y doubles its productivity, okay, in the output of drink, and both countries produce only one good according to comparative? So basically what they are saying is that indirectly they are just asking us to calculate a comparative advantage, but they have given a scenario as well that what will happen if country Y doubles its productivity. Now guys, I'm going to break this MCQ down. They've given too much data and it's kind of getting confusing. First, what we need to do is that they have given hours, right? We need to calculate in order to find the comparative advantage, we need to calculate the number of units. That is my way to go about it. What you need to do is that what you do basically, that here they have given that in 1 hour, that in order to produce 1 unit you need 10 hours, right, and 20 hours respectively of country X and Y, and then 2 and 12. So basically they have given you the number of hours. What you do is that you calculate the number of food and drink units that will be produced, the number of food and drink units that will be produced in 1 hour, right? Because because in order to calculate the comparative advantage, we have to assume that the same amount of resources are being used, and only then we can find out the comparative advantage. Because if different resources and different hours are being used, then we can't really calculate the comparative advantage like that. So we first calculate that how much will be produced, how much will be produced in 1 hour. So for country X, it takes 10 hours to produce 1 unit of food. So in 1 hour, how many units of food will be made? 0.1. That is 1 over 10, right? And similarly, how many units of drinks will be made? 0.5. That is 1 over 2. Okay. For country Y, for country Y, I'll just do it here. For country Y, in order to produce 1 unit of food, in order to basically produce, in order to produce 1 unit of food in 1 hour, 20 hours are required to produce 1 unit of each. So in 1 hour, how many units can be made? In 1 hour, 1 over 20, that is 0.05. So 0.05 units of food can be made in 1 hour. And for drinks, 1 over 12. So it's telling us that 0.08 units can be made. Now, still we can't really find the comparative advantage until we take a common ground. So let's do one thing. Yeah, so 0.08. Now, but before we do that, let's first see what they're saying. What will be the result if country Y doubles its productivity, right? So now what we have done is that we have studied that in 1 hour, 0.1 units of X can be made, food can be made, and 0.5 units of drinks can be made. And in 1 hour for country Y, 0.05 units of food can be made and 0.08 units of drinks can be made. Now, guys, they're saying that country Y double this productivity, that is, the efficiency rises for food, right? For drinks, in the output of drinks, which means that in 1 hour, if 0.08 units of drinks can be made, and if doubles its productivity, then this will double as well, right? So it will be how much? 0.08 times 2, that is 0.16. So I'm going to erase this and I'm going to write 0.06 here. So what I did was that 0.08 units were made in 1 hour, but they have doubled the productivity. So that in the same 1 hour, they can actually end up making 0.08 times 2, which is 0.16. So they could end up making 0.16 units of drinks. Okay, clear? Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calculating competitive advantage by doing that. For example, let's calculate the competitive advantage for country X and country Y in food and drink by, let's first see that which country has a competitive advantage in drink. And for that we need to take we need to calculate the opportunity cost in terms of a common number, because you can't really calculate the opportunity cost using these figures. Why? Because what will you say, that 0.5, in order to produce 0.5 drinks, 0.1 have to be foregone, and in order to produce 0.16 drinks, 0.05 have to be foregone. So the numbers are different, so you can't really say which has a lower or which has a higher opportunity cost. For that you need a common ground. So what you'll do is that you'll say that in order to produce one drink, just calculate the opportunity cost in order to produce one drink, because that will make it easier for you and you can actually find the opportunity cost in that way. So in order to produce one drink, how many units of food you need to forgo, and for that you need to divide 0.1 by 0.5, and that gives you 0.2. So basically, in order to produce one drink, 0.2 units of food has to be foregone. And for country Y, in order to produce one drink, right, how many units of food have to be foregone? 0.05 divided by 0.16, basically 0.31. So 0.31 units of food have to be foregone. So you can clearly see that country X has a competitive advantage in drinks, because now you calculated the opportunity cost for one drink for both countries. Initially you don't have those figures. Now you have a common ground. Now you are actually calculating that which country, because now you can actually compare that which country can actually produce 1 unit of drink at a lower opportunity cost, right? Because now the comparison can be made, right? You can actually calculate the opportunity cost for, because if you're calculating the opportunity cost of one drink for country X, then you also need to calculate the opportunity cost of the same one drink for country Y. You can't have another number in that sense. So for country X, in order to produce one drink, 0.2 units of food are foregone, and to produce the same one drink in country Y, 0.31 units of food are foregone. So obviously you need to forego more food in country Y in order to produce a drink. So definitely country X has a competitive advantage in producing drinks, right? So country X has a competitive advantage in producing drinks because you need to forego less food. So we came to that conclusion. Now let's also calculate the competitive advantage for producing as in the competitive advantage for food as well. Let's do that as well, right? And for that we'll just use the same figures and we'll see that what is the opportunity cost in order to produce 1 unit of food. So see, for country X, in order to produce 1 unit of food, how many drinks you need to forgo. So if you're producing 0.1 unit of food, you're foregoing 0.5 drinks. So if you produce 1 unit of food, how many drinks are you foregoing? So just divide 0.5 by 0.1, that gives us 5 units. So 5 units of drinks are basically foregone if you end up producing 1 unit of food in country X. And for country Y, if you produce 1 unit of food in country Y, how many drinks are foregone? 0.16 over 0.05, and that gives us 0.32, we come to the conclusion that in order to produce 1 unit of food in country X, you need to forego 5 drinks, while in country Y, the same one food can be produced by foregoing only 3.2 drinks. So definitely country Y has a competitive advantage in food. So we come to the conclusion that country Y has a competitive advantage in food. Okay, so we have made true conclusions: country X drink, country Y food. Okay, this is simple, such a simple MCQ. Now they are asking us that country Y doubled its productivity, that we sorted out. And both countries now produce only one good according to comparative advantage. So country X will produce drinks, country Y will produce food. Now, will country Y produce drink instead of food? No. Country Y will actually produce food because that is where it has a comparative advantage. This is not the correct answer. World drink production will rise. We don't really know that world drink production will rise. It should rise theoretically, but we really don't know the exchange ratios between these two countries, whether they are trading in, as in whether they are lying between the opportunity cost ratios. And also, this shouldn't be the answer. World food production will fall. Theoretically, it should rise, but we really don't know from the data that is given. As far as country X is concerned, yes, X will continue to produce drinks, so it makes A the correct answer because X has a comparative advantage in drink. And the question is also asked saying that both countries produce only one good according to comparative advantage. Now, if you look at this question was just asking us to calculate the comparative advantage that which country has a comparative advantage in food or drink. And the only technique here was that instead of giving the units, they gave the number of hours. So whenever the number of hours are given, you calculate, if the number of hours given are different, you always calculate how many units can be produced in 1 hour for both food and drink and for both countries. That is step one. Step one is that you calculate how many units of food and drink can be produced in 1 hour. Once you calculate how many units of food and drink can be produced in 1 hour, then you need to find out that if you produce either a drink or a food in either country, what will be the opportunity cost? And for that, you need to figure out, you need a common ground for that. So for that, you need to calculate the opportunity cost of either food or drink, or for 1 unit of food or drink for both the countries. And then you can compare that which has a lower opportunity cost. And then the rest, you all know what to do, right? You can easily find out the comparative advantage. So I think we're done with question 27. Question 28 says reducing the exchange rate helps to decrease a country's BOP because it makes imports more expensive and exports cheaper. Which statement this describes? It's an expenditure switching policy because that's the objective of an expenditure switching policy. Aim is to switch the expenditure away from imports to domestic goods. And devaluation makes that possible because it makes your domestic goods relatively cheaper against the imports because it's making the imports artificially expensive. So consumers switch to domestic goods. So D is the correct answer. Question 29, an increase in which variable is a contraction in monetary policy? Definitely interest rates, because when interest rates go up, your aggregate demand would go down because consumer expenditure and investments would go down since cost of borrowing goes up. As far as budget deficit and budget surplus is concerned, this has to do with fiscal policy because budget deficit and surplus arises if the government spending is more than taxation, and this is the government spending is less than the amount of tax revenue received. And both have to do with fiscal policy. Question 30 says, what are the government monetary policies that would be most effective in a global recession? Recession is a consistent decline in AD for a continuous period of 2 consecutive quarters. Remember that, or 6 months, right? Your AD has to be declined for consecutive 2 quarters. Only then you use the word recession. Otherwise, you can call it a mere recessionary effect. Question 30, the answer to question 30, allowing the rate of interest to fluctuate. No, you are not allowed. You can't really increase business taxation as well. It would have the opposite effect of reducing AD. Our objective is to increase AD in a recession. Increasing the budget surplus and raising tariffs on imports. Increasing the budget surplus would mean that you reduce the government spending, which we don't want that. Keeping the interest rate very low and increasing money supply, yes, this should be the correct answer. If you reduce the interest rate very low, obviously, and increase the money supply, that's the best way to combat a recession, and that is what we saw that happened in COVID. It's because it's an expansionary monetary policy. We know what expansionary monetary policies are, reducing the interest rate and money supply. So guys, yeah, we're done with this paper. I wish you all the best for tomorrow, guys. I wish you all the best, definitely. I tried my level best to solve as many papers as possible, but due to lack of time, I was not able to do as many. I wished I could have done as much as possible, but I wish you all the best, guys. You all will be in my prayers. Please do mention in the comments that how did you enjoy my past papers? Did you understand them? Do you find it useful? And you want them to that I solve more and more papers for your juniors, for O levels, who are people who are coming to A levels as well. Do recommend the channel, share the channel with the students of O levels so that they may help as well. They may get help as well. All the prayers for you guys. See you all. Best of luck. Take care.